You're with Julian on the Brown Note and Israel v Palestine. Happy Christmas, Mr. Putin. Well, hasn't he just got the biggest Christmas present he could have possibly hoped for? So I focused a lot on the conflict in Ukraine over the last probably 18 months or so, mainly from a perspective, as I do a lot of things on this show, that isn't being shown in Western news media, which is usually the slant I take on things. And I did focus on the uprising in Ukraine in 2013 and how the West fomented and supported it, and the impact of it, and the different parties involved, and also the lead up to this current conflict, and the fact that the Western world has never pushed for peace and has continually funneled billions of dollars of arms a month to keep the conflict going, with what appears to be the aim of, one, selling weaponry, and two, punishing Russia, and three, expanding NATO, all of which are dishonourable in the extreme. And I've made my thoughts clear on this and how it hasn't benefited the Ukrainian people at all. And it's pushed the world into a perilously Cold War state, and also the fact that the Western nations unifying behind this cause looks very, very old-fashioned, with the BRIC nations, of which Russia and China are the foundational stones, rising to be a larger economic bloc than the European Union or America. That it almost looks like the end of empire stuff. The bad side for Putin has been that even though the West thinks they're the world, and they're very much not. So, I did a piece a while back on how 22 African nations went to Moscow to meet with Vladimir Putin on extending economic ties back in March this year. So the idea that Russia is a pariah with every other nation than Western nations isn't true. And also I've focused on the level of punishment that the Russians have got, even down to athletes and businessmen. Stuff that's really hard to reconcile with the wars I opposed in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and Syria, that were led by America and Britain, and the people that supported them would never have been treated like this. They would never have gone after their businessmen and their athletes, and to the extent that's happened in this conflict, and the wider long-term ramifications of being able to justify not doing that to, let's see now. So we had at least an on-paper moral validity to what was happening, ignoring the context of the Ukraine-Russia relationship and the overthrow of the democratic elected government in Ukraine and the persecution of the ethnic Russian side of Ukraine. Ignoring all of that, we had some sort of moral validity in saying we are supporting, even though we never asked for any peace, we are supporting a much smaller country and military being attacked and invaded by a much larger aggressor. And Putin's had terrible press ever since, not so much in places like China, but in the global sphere. He's had a very, he's become pariah status and so on. Now, that's all gone to hell in a handbasket because of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Because the West went in so hard in supporting Ukraine, and now they've gone so hard in supporting a much bigger nation, occupying and invading and attacking a much smaller one. And you can try and weigh that any way you like, but the amount of people I see online that claim to support both Ukraine and Israel in this two theatres of war and claim not to be massive hypocrites is jaw-dropping. We all know it's a massively hypocritical thing for Biden to ask for weapons for Israel in the US budget at the same time he's asking for weapons for Ukraine. Now, not only does everyone apart from Western governments feel this way, Western populations are marching in their hundreds of thousands to show that they see this way. The level of moral validity that the West had over Putin is gone. There is no way they can sit at the United Nations and complain about war crimes and complain about a powerful aggressor with what's happening in the Gaza Strip and the fact that the West is supporting it. You want to talk about war crimes? Here's some war crimes for you. You want to talk about women and children being targeted and killed? Here's some of that. Did no one think this through from an optics perspective? Because there's no way not to say it's hypocritical. A hypocrite never agrees they're a hypocrite. A hypocrite says, I have a reason for supporting Ukraine because of X, and I have a reason for supporting Israel because of Y. And even though they contradict each other, they're their reasons for holding a contradictory opinion, and they deny that it's contradictory. But it still is. Hypocrites never agree they're a hypocrite, but they are. And this has rubbed all of this condemnation that we're levelling against Putin off the table, as far as most of the world will see it. Are we going to go after Israeli businessmen now? No. Are we going to go after Israeli athletes now? No. The hypocrisy will build and build the worse this conflict gets, and it's only really getting underway. We're now looking at, 22 premature babies in a powerless hospital in the Gaza Strip being near death. The optics on these things are not transferable to saying, yeah, but we support these people. We know you support these people, and you always have. To say Russia has a historic past of abusing Ukraine going back to the 1930s and beyond, well, the Palestinian territories have been occupied since the late 1940s. There are plenty of other examples of these incursions, like Operation Cast Lead, where the death toll of women and children was astronomical. So Putin is now probably looking at this conflict and just can't believe that he's got this out like he's got. It's massively deflected from attention globally on the war in Ukraine. It's massively weakened Zelensky. It's massively weakened any pretense the West had to morality over this conflict because of their support for what's happening in the Gaza Strip. And the thousands of women and children that have been killed already. And thousands more will by the end of it. And cutting off power to hospitals. And claiming everything you blow up that's a civilian is a Hamas base. So Putin's going to have a great Christmas because he's probably going, well, they can't really say anything anymore. And he's in a really unique position that the West aren't, because he's actually friends with both sides. So he's got a good relationship with Israel, and he's got a good relationship with the Palestinian territories because of the historic ties with Iran and Syria that Russia has. He's seen as a relatively neutral character here. But how is Joe Biden going to go to the United Nations complaining about all these horrible things that Russia is doing in Ukraine while supporting Israel doing horrible things in the Gaza Strip? No one's going to buy this anymore.